I was debugging code when my phone buzzed at 2:15 p.m. Mom never called midday, so I assumed it was something small. Instead, her voice carried that overly cheerful tone that always meant trouble. "Sweetheart, we helped Amanda with her housing situation." I thought she meant a down payment, but then she dropped it. "We used the emergency account to buy her a house, about $47,000. Amanda really deserved it." The emergency account, the one I built for real family crises, my savings. Before I could breathe, Amanda jumped in laughing. "Come on, Boston, you didn't need that money. You're single, no real responsibilities, and you make good money. Plus now, you can visit my new place." My sister had wiped out my security and was bragging about it. The drive home from my office passed in a blur of disbelief and mounting panic. $47,000. That wasn't just emergency money sitting in some abstract account. That was 3 years of sacrifice. 3 years of choosing generic groceries over name brands, 3 years of driving my 10-year-old Honda Civic instead of upgrading, 3 years of skipping vacations and expensive dinners out. But more than that, it was Sarah's ring. I'd been meticulously saving for an engagement ring for my girlfriend of 2 years. Not just any ring, but the perfect vintage Art Deco setting Sarah had admired in a jewelry store window last Christmas. The jeweler had quoted me $8,000, and I'd been just 2 months away from having enough saved to surprise her with a proposal on her birthday next month. The remaining money in that account was earmarked for Dad's upcoming cardiac ablation procedure. His insurance would cover the surgery itself, but the specialized post-operative care and medications would cost thousands out of pocket. I'd promised him privately that the family emergency fund would handle those expenses so he could focus on recovery without financial stress. Now both of those carefully laid plans had evaporated because my sister wanted a house she couldn't afford on her retail manager salary. I pulled into my parents' driveway behind Amanda's bright red sedan, noting the irony that she'd somehow managed to lease a car that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The front door opened before I could knock, and Mom's anxious face appeared in the doorway. "Boston, sweetheart, come in. Your father's in the kitchen making coffee." Dad looked up from the coffee maker as I entered, his expression carefully neutral. Robert Miller had always been the family diplomat, the one who smoothed over conflicts and found compromise solutions. But today, something in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with the situation either. "Son, sit down. Let's talk through this like adults." Amanda was sprawled across the living room couch, scrolling through her phone with the casual indifference of someone who had just won a significant victory. She didn't look up when I entered, but I caught her slight smirk in my peripheral vision. "Amanda, can you explain to me how this happened? I set up that account specifically for medical emergencies and genuine financial crises. Buying a house doesn't exactly qualify." She finally lifted her eyes from her screen, and I saw something cold and calculating in her expression that I'd never noticed before. "Mom and Dad told you already. I needed help and you had money just sitting there doing nothing. Besides, everyone knows you think you're too good for this family anyway. This is your chance to actually contribute something meaningful instead of just showing off your big city salary." "Showing off my salary, Amanda. I've never said anything about my income to anyone in this family." "Oh, please." She sat up straighter, her voice taking on a mocking tone. "You drive here in your business casual clothes talking about your tech projects and your downtown apartment. Meanwhile, I'm working 60-hour weeks at the store just to afford rent on a 1-bedroom apartment in the sketchy part of town." Mom intervened before I could respond. "Amanda has been having such a difficult time, Boston. She told us about some of the things you said about our hometown, about how you were embarrassed to bring your girlfriend around because we're too simple for your sophisticated lifestyle." The words hit me like cold water. I never said anything like that. "Mom, I love bringing Sarah home. She adores you both, and I'm proud of where I come from." "Then why," Amanda interrupted, "did you tell your coworkers that you grew up in a family of small-town losers who never amounted to anything?" The accusation was so completely fabricated that I couldn't immediately find words to respond. I stared at my sister, trying to reconcile this manipulative stranger with the person I thought I'd known my entire life. I have never ever said anything remotely like that to anyone. Amanda, where is this coming from? She was ready with her answer, pulling out her phone and scrolling to what appeared to be a screenshot of text messages. Right here. You sent these to your friend Marcus last month when you were complaining about having to come home for Dad's birthday. I looked at the screen and my blood turned cold. The messages were in my name, sent from my phone number, but they contained words I had never typed or thought. Harsh criticisms of my family, complaints about their lack of ambition, embarrassment about introducing Sarah to such backward people. This is fake. Amanda, I don't know how you created this, but I never sent these messages. So, now I'm a liar too. She turned to our parents with wounded eyes. See what I mean? He can't even admit what he said. He's so ashamed of us that he won't take responsibility for his own words. Dad set down his coffee cup with a heavy sigh. Boston? I'm disappointed. We raised you better than this. Your sister has been struggling, and instead of helping family, you've been talking about us behind our backs. The betrayal felt complete. My own parents believed these fabricated messages over my direct denial. They had chosen to trust Amanda's version of events without ever asking for my side of the story. There's something else, Amanda added, her hand moving protectively to her stomach. I'm pregnant. All this stress about money and housing has been making me sick, and my doctor says anxiety isn't good for the baby. When Mom and Dad offered to help with the house, I finally felt like I could relax and focus on being healthy. The room fell silent except for Mom's sharp intake of breath. Dad's expression immediately softened, and Mom moved to sit beside Amanda on the couch. Oh, honey, that's wonderful news. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I wanted to be sure everything was okay first. But with stable housing now, I can start planning for the baby's future. I felt the walls closing in around me. Not only had my family betrayed my trust and stolen my savings, but they were now rallying around Amanda's pregnancy announcement like it justified everything they'd done. Any argument I made now would be painted as attacking a pregnant woman and threatening the health of their future grandchild. I spent that evening in my apartment staring at bank statements spread across my kitchen table like evidence in a criminal case. Every deposit, every careful calculation, every sacrifice documented in neat rows of numbers that now meant nothing. I'd printed out screenshots of my conversations with the jeweler, my research into Dad's medical expenses, my budget spreadsheets showing how I'd allocated every dollar with specific purposes in mind. The next morning, I returned to my parents' house armed with documentation and a desperate hope that hard evidence would cut through whatever spell Amanda had cast over them. I want to show you exactly what that money was for, I announced as I spread the papers across their dining room table. These are receipts from the jewelry store where I've been planning to buy Sarah's engagement ring. Here's the quote for Dad's medical expenses that insurance won't cover. This is 3 years of financial planning, not just random savings sitting around doing nothing. Mom examined the jeweler's receipt with a frown, while Dad picked up the medical cost estimates. For a moment, I thought I saw recognition in their eyes, maybe even regret. Then Amanda walked into the room, took one look at my paperwork, and laughed. Oh my gosh, Boston, this is so dramatic. You're acting like we stole your life savings or something. You can save up for a ring again. Sarah isn't going anywhere, and if she really loves you, she'll understand that family comes first. But this isn't about the ring, Amanda. It's about trust, about consent, about the fact that you manipulated our parents into taking money that wasn't freely offered. Manipulated. Her voice rose with indignation. I told them I needed help, and they chose to be generous. That's what real families do for each other. But I guess you wouldn't understand that since you've been telling everyone in Denver how embarrassed you are by us. She pulled out her phone again this time, showing what appeared to be a social media conversation where I had supposedly complained to friends about my backwards family and their small-minded attitudes. The posts were detailed and cruel, describing specific embarrassing moments from family gatherings and mocking my parents' working-class backgrounds. Amanda, I don't even use that social media platform. You know I deleted those accounts years ago. Right, of course you'd say that now. But your friends have screenshots too. Marcus even told his girlfriend about the things you said, and she felt so bad for me that she reached out to offer support. Mom's face had gone pale as she read the fabricated posts. Boston. These things you wrote about your father's job, about our house, about the way we talk. How could you be so cruel? Because I didn't write them. Mom, think about this logically. When have I ever said anything negative about our family? When have I ever acted embarrassed or ashamed? But Amanda was ready with more ammunition. She'd apparently been building this campaign for months, collecting fake evidence and planting seeds of doubt about my character. She showed them edited audio recordings of phone conversations where my voice had been spliced together to create statements I'd never made. She had witnesses who claimed I'd badmouthed my family at social events I'd never attended. The most damaging piece was a video that appeared to show me at a party drunkenly ranting about my pathetic family back in the sticks. The person in the video looked enough like me to be convincing, especially to people who wanted to believe Amanda's narrative. I know this is hard to accept, she said with fake sympathy, but Boston has been living a double life. He's been taking advantage of your generosity while secretly despising you. At least now you know the truth. Dad pushed the papers aside and looked at me with disappointment, so profound it felt like a physical weight on my chest. Son, I don't understand how you became this person. We're proud of your success, but not if it means you've forgotten where you came from. I haven't forgotten anything, Dad. You taught me the importance of hard work and integrity. Those values are why I've been saving money responsibly, why I've been planning for the future. This is exactly the opposite of forgetting where I came from. But my words fell on deaf ears. Amanda had poisoned the well so thoroughly that every defense I offered sounded like more evidence of my supposed deception. When I pulled out my real phone to show them my actual text messages and social media activity, they accused me of having secret accounts and deleted conversations. The final blow came when Amanda clutched her stomach and winced dramatically. All this arguing is making me feel sick. The stress isn't good for the baby. Boston, I understand you're upset, but can we please just accept that what's done is done? I promise I'll pay you back someday when I'm in a better financial position. Mom immediately rushed to Amanda's side, helping her to the couch and bringing her a glass of water. Dad shot me a stern look that clearly communicated I was the villain in this scenario for causing distress to a pregnant family member. That's enough, Boston. Your sister needs support right now, not accusations and drama. The money helps secure a stable home for your future niece or nephew. Try to see the bigger picture here. I left their house that day feeling more isolated and betrayed than I'd ever experienced in my life. My own family had chosen to believe an elaborate fiction, rather than trust the son and brother they'd supposedly raised with love and pride. Amanda had successfully painted me as the selfish, ungrateful villain while positioning herself as the struggling victim who deserved rescue. But something about her performance felt off. The way she'd had answers ready for every question, evidence prepared for every doubt, witnesses lined up for every accusation. The timing of her pregnancy announcement. The convenient stomach pain whenever the conversation turned toward uncomfortable territory. That night, I started making notes of my own. If Amanda had been planning this campaign for months, there had to be inconsistencies in her story. And if she was willing to fabricate evidence against me, what else might she be lying about? My suspicions about Amanda's pregnancy began 3 days after the confrontation when I ran into her friend Kelly at the grocery store. Kelly had always been friendly toward me, and her excited congratulations about becoming an uncle seemed genuine enough until she mentioned specific details that didn't add up. Amanda's so excited about the baby being due in March. It's perfect timing since she'll have the whole summer to get settled in the new house before going back to work. March. But Amanda had told our parents she was 10 weeks along, which would put her due date in January, not March. When I mentioned this discrepancy to Kelly, she looked confused and said Amanda had definitely told her the baby was due in early spring. That evening, I drove past Amanda's new house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood about 20 minutes from our parents' home. The house was dark, but Amanda's car was in the driveway. I was about to leave when I noticed something that made me pull over and look more carefully. Through the kitchen window, I could see Amanda moving around, normally bending over to pick something up from the floor, stretching up to reach a high cabinet. No careful movements, no protective hand over her belly, no signs of the morning sickness she'd been complaining about to Mom. The next day, I called in a personal favor with my friend Derek, who worked at the bank where our family emergency account was held. Derek couldn't give me detailed information due to privacy policies, but he could confirm some general facts about recent activity on the account. Boston. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but there were multiple withdrawals over the past several months, not just one big purchase. Someone's been moving money in smaller amounts since February. And the signature authorizations. Let me just say you might want to request copies of all the paperwork associated with this account. That afternoon, I visited the bank in person and requested documentation for every transaction on the emergency account over the past year. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Amanda had been systematically draining the account for 6 months. Small withdrawals, at first 500 here, 1,000 there, always just under the threshold that would trigger automatic notifications to both account holders. The signatures on the authorization forms looked like mine, but when I compared them to my actual signature on file, the differences were obvious to anyone paying attention. She'd been forging my signature with increasing boldness, and the bank had processed every transaction without verification, because she'd convinced them she had my verbal authorization for family emergency expenses. But the most shocking discovery was a conversation recorded by the bank's security system during one of her visits. On the video, Amanda could be clearly heard telling the teller that I was totally on board with helping family, and that I'd said she could take whatever she needed from the account. She'd been spinning lies to financial professionals with the same casual confidence she'd used on our parents. The bank manager, Patricia Chen, reviewed the footage with obvious concern. "Mr. Miller, this appears to be unauthorized use of your account. We should have required written authorization for withdrawals of this size, especially given the pattern of increasing amounts. I'm going to initiate a fraud investigation immediately." That evening, I sat in my car outside Amanda's house again, trying to process the magnitude of her deception. Not only had she stolen my money through forgery and fraud, but she'd been planning this theft for months, while simultaneously building a character assassination campaign to justify her actions. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Haven't heard from you in a few days. Everything okay with your family? Your mom seemed upset when I called to ask about dinner plans." Sarah. In all the chaos and betrayal, I'd barely thought about how this would affect my relationship with the woman I'd been planning to marry. How could I explain that my family had stolen the money I'd saved for her ring? How could I tell her about the lies Amanda had spread, the fake evidence, the way my own parents had chosen to believe the worst about me? But something in Sarah's text suggested she already knew more than she was letting on. When I called her back, her voice carried a strange tension I'd never heard before. "Boston, we need to talk. In person. Tonight. There are things you need to know about what's been happening with your family." I drove to Sarah's apartment with a growing sense that the betrayals I'd discovered were just the beginning of something much worse. When I arrived, she was waiting with a thick folder on her coffee table and an expression that mixed anger, sadness, and determination. "Sit down, honey. I've been investigating your sister for the past 3 months, and what I found is going to change everything." Sarah opened the folder and spread its contents across her coffee table like a detective presenting evidence in a murder case. Bank statements, printed screenshots, photographs, and what appeared to be several handwritten pages covered every inch of available surface. "I need you to listen to everything before you react, okay? This is going to be hard to hear, but I promise you're not crazy, and you're not alone in this." She pulled out her laptop and opened an audio file. 3 weeks ago, I was having coffee with my friend Jessica when Amanda came into the shop with 2 women I didn't recognize. They sat at the table next to us, and Amanda started bragging about how she'd figured out a way to get money from her stupid brother, who was too trusting for his own good. The recording was crystal clear. Amanda's voice unmistakably describing her plan to manipulate our parents and forge my signatures. She talked about researching legal loopholes in joint account ownership and finding a lawyer who'd helped her understand exactly how to access money without technically breaking the law. She said you'd been saving for an engagement ring and she thought it was hilarious that she was going to ruin your proposal plans. She actually laughed about it, Boston. She said you deserved it for thinking you were better than the rest of the family. Sarah clicked to another file. But here's the thing that really made me start digging. Listen to this part. Amanda's voice continued. The best part is, I'm not even pregnant. I bought one of those fake pregnancy test apps, and I've been padding my clothes when I visit mom and dad. By the time they figure it out, I'll be settled in the house and can claim I had a miscarriage from all the stress. They'll feel so bad for me they won't ask questions about paying Boston back. I felt physically sick. The pregnancy that had been used to justify everything, the emotional manipulation that had turned my parents against me, the guilt trips about harming the baby with stress, all of it was fabricated. There's more, Sarah said quietly. Jessica and I started following up on some of the things Amanda said, and we found other people she's done this to. She handed me a printed email thread between her and Detective Jake Morrison, a mutual friend who worked in financial crimes. Jake had been investigating a pattern of family fraud cases and was immediately interested in Amanda's methods. Boston. Your sister has been running versions of this scam for over 2 years. Remember when your grandfather had to sell his fishing boat and downsize to that tiny apartment? Amanda convinced him to lend her money for a medical emergency that never existed. She told him she'd pay him back after insurance processed her claim. My grandfather, who'd worked in construction for 40 years and loved nothing more than his weekend fishing trips. He'd sold his boat and moved into senior housing because Amanda had convinced him she needed surgery for a life-threatening condition. I'd never connected those events because Amanda had asked everyone to keep her medical situation private to avoid family worry. Jake found 3 other people in town who've been approached by Amanda with similar sob stories. She targets family members and close family friends, always with emotional manipulation and fake urgency. She's been using your name specifically, telling people you're too selfish to help family and that she has to handle everything alone. Sarah pulled out a stack of screenshots from Amanda's real social media accounts, not the fabricated ones she'd shown our parents. In these posts, Amanda bragged about expensive purchases, showed off designer handbags and jewelry, and talked about weekend trips to casinos in neighboring states. She has a serious gambling problem, Boston. Jake ran her financial records and she's been losing thousands of dollars every month at 3 different casinos. The house purchase wasn't about wanting home ownership. She was facing bankruptcy and needed to convert liquid assets into property before creditors could seize them. Everything clicked into place. Amanda's desperation, her willingness to fabricate elaborate lies, her detailed preparation for accessing my money. She hadn't just stolen from me impulsively. She'd been planning this theft as a solution to gambling debts that threatened her entire financial future. But here's the evidence that's going to save you. Sarah continued, pulling out the final section of documents. Jake helped me request security footage from the bank where Amanda made the withdrawals. We have video of her forging your signature, and more importantly, we have recordings of her conversations with bank employees where she admits the withdrawals weren't authorized by you. She showed me printed transcripts of those conversations where Amanda could be heard coaching herself on what to say, if questioned, and even practicing forging my signature while sitting in her car in the bank parking lot. We also have testimony from the women she was bragging to at the coffee shop. One of them is a paralegal who recognized that Amanda was describing criminal fraud, and she's willing to testify about everything she heard. I stared at the mountain of evidence Sarah had assembled while I'd been floundering in confusion and self-doubt. She'd been protecting me and building a case for justice while I'd been consumed with trying to defend myself against false accusations. Sarah, how long have you been working on this? Why didn't you tell me what you suspected? I started getting suspicious about 6 weeks ago when Amanda began making those fake social media posts about you. I know you, Boston. I know your character, your values, the way you talk about your family. None of those posts sounded like anything you'd ever say, even if you were angry. She took my hands in hers, her eyes fierce with protective love. I wanted to have solid proof before I told you anything. because I knew Amanda was smart and manipulative. I couldn't risk her finding out we were onto her and destroying evidence or creating new lies. But also, I was documenting everything because I want to marry you someday, and I needed to make sure we could protect our future family from this kind of manipulation. The relief of having someone believe me, someone who'd fought for the truth while I'd been isolated and gasping for air, overwhelmed me completely. But more than that, I felt a surge of love and admiration for this incredible woman who'd turned into a detective to protect our relationship and expose my sister's crimes. "What happens now?" I asked. Sarah smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "Now we take all of this to Jake, file criminal charges, and get your money back with interest. And then we make sure Amanda can't do this to anyone else ever again." Jake Morrison's office in the Financial Crimes Division looked exactly like what you'd expect from a detective who spent his days tracking down sophisticated fraud schemes. Whiteboards covered in timelines and suspect photos, filing cabinets labeled with case numbers, and a computer setup that looked capable of hacking into government databases. "Sarah briefed me on the basics," Jake said as we settled into chairs across from his desk. "But I need to hear the full story from you, Boston. Start from the beginning and don't leave out any details, no matter how small they seem." I walked him through everything: the phone call, the confrontation, the fake evidence, the forged signatures. Jake took notes and occasionally asked clarifying questions, his expression growing more serious as the scope of Amanda's deception became clear. "This is significantly more sophisticated than most family fraud cases I see," he said when I finished. "Your sister didn't just steal money. She orchestrated a comprehensive character assassination campaign to justify the theft and prevent you from seeking help. That level of premeditation elevates this from simple embezzlement to organized fraud conspiracy." He pulled out a legal pad and began sketching a timeline. "Based on what Sarah gathered and what you've told me, Amanda committed multiple felonies: identity theft for forging your signatures, wire fraud for the electronic transfers, mortgage fraud for using false information on her house purchase application, and potentially racketeering if we can prove this was part of a larger pattern." Sir, mortgage fraud. I hadn't heard that detail before. "Sarah discovered that Amanda listed your income on her mortgage application instead of her own, and she forged employment verification documents claiming to work at your company. The bank approved her loan based on your financial profile, not hers. That's federal mortgage fraud, which carries serious prison time." Jake opened a thick file folder and pulled out bank records I'd never seen before. "We subpoenaed Amanda's complete financial records, and the picture they paint is devastating. She owes $87,000 to various creditors, mostly casinos and high-interest loan sharks. Her retail manager salary barely covers her minimum living expenses, much less these debts." He showed me credit card statements revealing thousands of dollars in daily gambling losses, loan agreements with predatory lenders charging interest rates that should have been illegal, and payment demands from collection agencies threatening legal action. "The people she owes money to aren't just credit card companies, Boston. Some of these debts are to individuals who don't use conventional collection methods. Amanda was facing physical threats, which explains her desperation and willingness to commit serious crimes." Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "Jake, show him the recordings." "Right. We got a warrant for Amanda's phone records and found several voicemails from her creditors. Listen to this one from 2 weeks before she accessed your account." The voice on the recording was cold and menacing. "Amanda, you've missed 3 payments and our patience is running out. You have 1 week to come up with $15,000 or we'll be visiting your workplace to discuss your debt in person. Don't make us come looking for you." She was cornered, Jake explained. Stealing your money wasn't just about wanting a house. It was about avoiding serious personal danger. That doesn't excuse the crimes, but it helps explain the level of planning and deception involved. He pulled out another set of documents. "Here's where things get interesting for your case. When Amanda applied for the mortgage, she claimed the down payment came from a gift from her parents. But we have bank records proving the money came directly from your joint account. That's mortgage fraud, and it makes the entire house purchase legally invalid." "What does that mean?" "It means Amanda doesn't actually own the house she's living in. The mortgage was obtained through fraudulent means which voids the entire transaction. The bank can foreclose immediately, and Amanda faces criminal charges for the false application. Jake stood up and walked to one of his whiteboards where he'd mapped out Amanda's various schemes. But here's the really good news for you. Because Amanda used your forged signature and falsified documents to obtain the mortgage, you're entitled to full restitution plus punitive damages. We're talking about recovering not just your original $47,000, but potentially double or triple that amount. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a text she'd received from her paralegal friend that morning. Amanda tried to contact one of the women who heard her confession at the coffee shop. She offered to pay her $1,000 to claim she misunderstood what Amanda was saying. When the woman refused, Amanda threatened to spread lies about her around town. Witness intimidation, Jake said with satisfaction. That's another felony charge. Amanda is making this case stronger for us with every desperate move she makes. He handed me a thick legal document. This is a criminal complaint we're filing today. It includes identity theft, wire fraud, mortgage fraud, and witness intimidation charges. We're also filing a civil lawsuit to recover your money, plus damages for emotional distress and financial harm. What about my parents? They were manipulated too. We'll need their cooperation as witnesses, but they're not facing any charges. Amanda deliberately misled them about your consent and forged documents to make the transactions appear legitimate. They're victims in this case, even though their actions hurt you. Jake's expression grew more serious. Boston, I need to warn you that this process might get ugly before it gets better. Amanda has shown she's willing to lie and manipulate to protect herself. When we arrest her and these charges become public, she'll probably escalate her attempts to paint you as the villain. I'm ready for that. I just want the truth to come out and my family to understand what really happened. Good, because we're going to make sure everyone in town knows exactly who Amanda Miller really is and what she's done to multiple innocent people. Sarah squeezed my hand as Jake gathered the documents into organized stacks. There's one more thing, Boston. The timing of all this works in our favor. Amanda's creditors are getting more aggressive, and she's running out of places to hide. The pressure is going to force her into making more mistakes, and we'll be ready to document every one of them. As we left Jake's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Not just hope for recovering my money, but hope that justice would be served, and that my family would finally see the truth about Amanda's manipulation and lies. The legal system was about to hold Amanda accountable for her crimes, and I was going to get my life back. The next morning, Jake called with news that surpassed even our most optimistic expectations. Boston, you need to get down to the station. Amanda's whole operation just collapsed overnight, and it's bigger than we thought. When I arrived at the police station, Jake led me to a conference room where several other detectives were assembled around a table covered with evidence bags and file folders. At 6 a.m. this morning, 2 of Amanda's gambling creditors showed up at her house demanding payment. The neighbors called police about the disturbance, and when our officers arrived, they found Amanda in the middle of a panic attack surrounded by threatening letters and evidence of her fraud schemes. Detective Lisa Rodriguez, who apparently specialized in gambling-related crimes, picked up the story. Your sister broke down completely and confessed to everything. Not just your case, but a pattern of fraud dating back 3 years involving 12 different victims. She's been running this scam systematically targeting family members and family friends of people she meets at casinos. She opened one of the file folders and showed me a handwritten confession that ran for 8 pages. Amanda admitted to forging signatures, creating fake pregnancy tests, lying about medical emergencies, and manipulating elderly relatives out of their retirement savings. She kept detailed records of every scam, including notes about each victim's emotional vulnerabilities and how to exploit them. She kept records. Gambling addicts often develop obsessive behaviors around organization and control, Jake explained. Amanda documented her cons the same way she tracked her betting patterns. She had spreadsheets, photos, even recordings of herself practicing lies before phone calls with victims. Detective Rodriguez pulled out Amanda's phone, which had been seized as evidence. We found text conversations with other gambling addicts where she bragged about her techniques and offered to teach them how to scam their own families. She was essentially running a fraud tutorial service. But here's the part that's going to make headlines, Jake continued. Amanda wasn't working alone. She's been part of a network of gambling addicts who share information about potential victims and coordinate their scams to avoid overlap. We arrested 3 other people this morning based on her confession. He showed me photographs of Amanda being led away in handcuffs, her face blotchy with tears, and completely devoid of the smug confidence she'd displayed during our family confrontations. The house, the fake pregnancy, the character assassination campaign against you. It was all part of a playbook these people developed for extracting money from family members. Your case was actually Amanda's graduation test to prove she deserved inclusion in their higher-level operations. Detective Rodriguez opened another folder containing bank records and casino surveillance photos. Amanda's gambling losses total over $200,000 in the past 18 months. She was betting amounts that people with her income should never have access to, which means she was using stolen money to fuel increasingly larger bets. The casinos kept extending her credit because she always seemed to have new sources of funding, Jake added. They didn't ask questions as long as she kept bringing money, but when her luck turned bad and she couldn't pay her debts, the pressure from creditors forced her into more desperate crimes. A new detective entered the room carrying a laptop. We just got the security footage from the coffee shop where Amanda made her confession to those women. You can see her practicing her facial expressions and rehearsing her story before approaching her targets. She's literally acting out the fake pregnancy symptoms. On the laptop screen, I watched my sister sitting alone at a corner table, placing her hand on her stomach, practicing a nauseated expression, and timing how long to hold the pose for maximum emotional impact. The calculated nature of her deception was chilling. The women she confessed to have agreed to testify, Detective Rodriguez said. They're actually relieved because they've been feeling guilty about not reporting what they heard sooner. Amanda's confession corroborates every detail of their testimony. Jake handed me a legal document with multiple official seals. This is a restitution order. Amanda's confession includes detailed accounting of money stolen from each victim, and she's agreed to pay full restitution plus damages to avoid additional charges. For your case specifically, you're getting back $68,000, your original money plus interest and compensation for emotional distress. $68,000. The court calculated damages based on the sophistication of the fraud, the emotional manipulation involved, and the impact on your family relationships. Amanda's confession specifically mentions that damaging your reputation with your parents was a deliberate strategy to prevent you from seeking help. Detective Rodriguez smiled. And there's more good news. We contacted your grandfather about the money Amanda stole from him, and he's getting full restitution too. Same with the other elderly victims. Amanda's required to make payments from her future earnings until every dollar is repaid. What about the house? Foreclosed yesterday. The bank is selling it to recover their losses, and any proceeds above the mortgage balance go toward victim restitution. Amanda will be living in a supervised halfway house as part of her plea agreement. Jake gathered the documents into a neat stack. Boston. Your sister is facing 18 months in prison, 3 years of supervised probation, mandatory gambling addiction treatment, and community service specifically focused on elder fraud prevention. She'll never be able to run cons like this again because her photo and case details are being shared with every financial institution in the region. As we walked out of the police station, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that justice was being served, sadness that my sister had fallen so far into destructive behavior, and gratitude that the truth had finally emerged in such a complete and undeniable way. But the best part was still to come. Jake had called my parents that morning and asked them to come to the station to hear Amanda's confession firsthand. They were waiting in their car when we reached the parking lot, their faces showing the same shock and confusion I'd experienced when first learning about Amanda's deception. Mom rushed toward me with tears streaming down her face. "Boston, honey, we're so sorry. We had no idea." Amanda lied to us about everything and we should have trusted you. Can you ever forgive us?" Dad wrapped both Mom and me in a fierce hug. "Son, I'm ashamed that we believed those lies about you. You've always been honest and responsible, and we should have known that hadn't changed. We're going to make this right. I promise." The healing process was just beginning, but for the first time in weeks I felt like I had my family back. 6 months later, I stood at the altar of St. Mary's Community Church, watching Sarah walk down the aisle in the vintage Art Deco-inspired wedding dress that perfectly matched the engagement ring I'd been able to purchase with the restitution money. The ring was even more beautiful than the original I'd planned to buy, funded not just by the returned savings, but by the additional damages Amanda had been required to pay. My father stood beside me as my best man, his presence representing the complete healing of our family relationships. After Amanda's confession and arrest, Dad and Mom had insisted on family therapy sessions to address the damage her manipulation had caused and to rebuild the trust that should never have been broken. "She's beautiful, son," Dad whispered as Sarah approached the altar, her smile radiant with joy and love. The guest list included Detective Jake Morrison and his wife Sarah's paralegal friend, who'd helped expose Amanda's lies, and several neighbors who'd supported us throughout the legal proceedings. Even my grandfather was there, having used his restitution money to buy a small fishing boat and regain some of the dignity Amanda had stolen along with his savings. After the ceremony during the reception at the community center, I stood to address our friends and family members who'd gathered to celebrate this new beginning. Many of you know that Sarah and I almost didn't make it to this day, not because our love wasn't strong enough, but because someone we trusted nearly destroyed our dreams through lies and manipulation. But what I've learned from this experience is that real family bonds aren't broken by temporary deception. They're strengthened when people choose truth and accountability over comfortable lies. I looked toward the table where Mom and Dad sat with Sarah's parents, all of them beaming with pride and happiness. My parents taught me values of honesty and hard work, and when they were deceived into acting against those values, they didn't make excuses or blame others. They acknowledged their mistakes, made amends, and worked to rebuild what had been damaged. That's the kind of integrity I want to bring to my marriage with Sarah. The applause was warm and heartfelt, but the real meaning of the moment was in the healing that had taken place over the past months. Amanda had completed her prison sentence 2 weeks earlier and was living in a halfway house while undergoing intensive gambling addiction treatment. She'd written me a letter taking full responsibility for her actions and expressing genuine remorse for the pain she'd caused. I'd chosen to forgive her, but with clear boundaries. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or enabling future destructive behavior. It meant refusing to let her actions poison my heart, while also protecting my family from further manipulation. The nonprofit organization I'd started with Jake's help, Family Financial Protection Services, had already helped 6 other families recover money stolen through similar fraud schemes. We provided legal assistance counseling resources and educational programs about recognizing and preventing family fraud. Turning my painful experience into a way to help others had given new meaning to everything I'd endured. During the father-daughter dance, Sarah whispered in my ear, "I'm so proud of who you became through all of this. You could have gotten bitter or vindictive, but instead you chose healing and helping others." "I learned from watching you," I replied. "When you could have just told me what Amanda was doing, you chose to gather evidence and build a case that would protect other people too. You taught me that real love means fighting for justice, not just personal happiness." As the evening wound down, Mom approached us with tears in her eyes. "Boston Sarah, I want you to know that your father and I have been volunteering with the Elder Fraud Prevention Program at the community center. We're sharing our story to help other parents recognize the warning signs of manipulation. We never want another family to go through what we did." And Dad added, "We've set up a college fund for your future children that only you and Sarah will have access to. No emergency accounts, no joint ownership with anyone else." We learned our lesson about protecting family assets from people who might abuse that trust. Late that night, as Sarah and I sat on the porch of our honeymoon cabin, she pulled out her phone and showed me a text message she'd received during the reception. "It's from Amanda. She wanted to congratulate us and to let us know she's been sober from gambling for 4 months. She's working in the kitchen at the halfway house and saving every penny to pay additional restitution to the people she hurt. I read the message, which was humble and sincere in a way I hadn't seen from my sister in years. I'm glad she's getting help. Maybe someday we can have a real relationship again, but it'll have to be built on honesty instead of the lies and manipulation she used before. Do you think you'll ever fully trust her again? I considered the question carefully. I think I can love her and want the best for her, while also protecting myself and our future family from being hurt again. Trust has to be earned through consistent actions over time, not just words or promises. Looking back on everything that had happened, I realized the most important lesson wasn't about money or family dynamics or even justice being served. It was about the difference between enabling someone's destructive behavior because you love them and holding them accountable because you love them. Amanda's gambling addiction and criminal behavior had been enabled by family members who confused loyalty with blind trust. By refusing to hold her responsible for her actions, we'd actually made it easier for her to hurt more people and deeper into her addiction. Real love sometimes means letting people face the consequences of their choices so they can learn and grow and become better versions of themselves. It means supporting their recovery while protecting yourself and others from their harmful behaviors. The money was just money. It could be saved again, replaced, recovered. But the relationships and trust that had been damaged required much more intentional work to repair. The process of rebuilding our family bonds had been painful, but ultimately strengthening because it was based on truth instead of comfortable illusions. As Sarah and I headed inside for our first night as a married couple, I felt gratitude for everything we'd experienced, even the painful parts. Without Amanda's betrayal, I might never have discovered the depth of Sarah's loyalty and strength. Without the crisis, my parents and I might never have learned to communicate more honestly about difficult topics. Without the legal battle, we might never have started the nonprofit that was already helping other families. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us contain the seeds of the best things that come later, but only if we're willing to choose growth over bitterness, truth over comfortable lies, and accountability over enabling. That's the kind of marriage I wanted to build with Sarah, and the kind of family legacy I hoped to pass on to our future children. Not perfection, but honesty. Not avoiding conflict, but resolving it with integrity. Not blind loyalty, but love that's strong enough to demand the best from each other. Have you ever faced a situation where someone you trusted betrayed that trust in a devastating way? How did you handle the choice between seeking revenge and choosing forgiveness with boundaries? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about how families can protect themselves from financial manipulation while still maintaining loving relationships. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find it who might be dealing with similar family fraud situations. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and building stronger relationships. And share this with someone who might benefit from learning about the warning signs of family financial manipulation. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and I hope you found something meaningful in our story that helps you navigate your own family challenges with wisdom and strength. Remember, real love sometimes requires tough choices, but those choices can lead to healing and growth that makes relationships stronger than they ever were before. Until next time, choose truth over comfort, accountability over enabling, and always remember that justice served with compassion creates the foundation for genuine healing and lasting peace.